Welcome to EdTech Talk, where we dive deep into the dynamic world of educational technology, course design, and feature faculty insights in higher education. I'm your host, Joy Ray, and in this episode, we are joined with Dr. Janet Spriggs, the President and Chief Executive Officer at Forsyth Tech. While planning this episode with my colleagues, we thought it would be fun to do something centered on love since we are releasing this close to Valentine's Day. And so the idea morphed into a spin-off of Dallas Herring's lecture from last year, Leading with Love, and the encouraged reading of Bell Hook's book, All About Love. It's also why I'm wearing my Valentine heart sweater today. But we thought no one better to speak on this topic of teaching with love would be our president, Dr. Spriggs. And it was very interesting. I've only worked here for a year and a half or so. It was fun to learn that you, in your busy schedule, take the time to still teach courses here at Forsyth Tech and that you keep up with teaching and learning practices while here in your role as president. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with me today. And before we dig into questions, can you tell us a little bit about where you started and what brought you here to Forsyth Tech?
Sure, I'd love to. Enjoy. Thank you so much for having me as your guest. I love the topic. No pun intended there at all. And I really love the heart sweater. I have a heart sweater that I just bought. I should have thought to wear it, but I'll definitely have it on for Valentine's Day. I started my journey in community colleges almost 29 years ago. In September, I'll celebrate my 29th anniversary working in community colleges here in North Carolina. Prior to that, I took a little detour and went through working in corporate America. I spent 14 years at a large corporation in Research Triangle Park. My bachelor's degree is in computer science, and so I was working, or computer information systems. It's an old degree. It wasn't called computer science back then. And so I was working primarily with computers, and it was great. I enjoy the technical things. I love a new gadget, new software, but we made a move to the coast of North Carolina for my husband's job, and I ended up being hired to start a computer department at Carteret Community College because they didn't have one. Quickly was asked to teach a Con Ed class, absolutely fell in love with teaching. And I tell people that when I made my way to Carteret Community College, I found my purpose. And I think that's true today. So I quickly went back to school and got a master's in instructional design and didn't move into full-time teaching, but have taught as an adjunct throughout my time as much as I possibly can. And so I just, I worked at Carteret for 15 years. I also got master's or MBA credits and eventually became a vice president for administrative services. I've basically led so many different things. I was chief operating officer when I left Rowan Cabarrus, where I was for about 7 years before becoming a first-time president here at Forsyth Tech. So I've had my hands in almost everything that we do and am privileged and honored every single day. I am just blessed to have found my way to the best of the 58 community colleges in North Carolina. And I'm hoping to end my career as the president here at Forsyth Tech. Hopefully not soon, but, just very, very happy and grateful to have the opportunity. The work we're doing here is amazing, and I'm just thrilled to be your president.
Well, thank you so much. I love listening to people's histories and backgrounds because it just shows all the rich, vast experience that you have. And that's not something that most people get to hear about. And so thank you for sharing that. I am a fellow instructional designer, so it's fun when people actually know what it is, right? And so I appreciate that. All right. So as we dig in, how would you define love in terms of an instructor and student relationship?
Yeah, so, what a really good question and a great topic. I think that love in terms of instructor-student relationship really looks different in some ways for every teacher and every student, possibly. But I do think there are three basic things that I would say. First, I think that any relationship that is based on care or love, and I know that, Bell Hooks does distinguish the difference between care and love, but regardless, a relationship based on either of those has to have authentic care and commitment. And by that, I mean, it's more than a warm sentiment. It's really, how do you show genuine concern for students, and how do you show genuine concern for students' growth, their well-being, their success? And for me, that's a lot about listening to students and thoughtfully providing them with whatever support they need to learn and to grow and to be successful. And every student's different, so that may look different, right, for each different student. I think the second thing is that it's believing in potential. Love means that we can see the potential in each and every student, especially when they often can't even see it in themselves. And so I think it's about inspiring our students to embrace all that education has to offer. That's really important, and helping them believe that they can take advantage of that and can achieve their greatest dreams and potential. And then finally, I think, and this falls very in line with Bell Hooks and what she, has shared in her books. It's about action. So action-oriented support. How do we, as faculty and staff who love our students, think of practical ways that we manifest that for them? How do we, that can be checking in when students struggle. It might be providing resources that they need, or it might just be affirmation. I find there's so much power in just listening and talking and affirming our students. And so those are my ideas on three ways that manifests.
I really appreciate those items. Sometimes we can't believe in ourselves because we just have that. And so showing that belief in someone else can help boost their belief in themselves. And then I've always heard, how do you spell love? It's Time. And that falls into the action category. Is you spend time, you help them, you listen to them by showing that authentic concern. So I really appreciate those three takeaways. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
The theme of last year's Dallas Herring Talk was leading with love. And so what stood out to you in that lecture last year?
So I love the Dallas Herring lecture every year. Dr. Russell Lowry Hart is a personal friend as well as a colleague. And so I was even more excited, I think, about last year. And I think that the way that Dr. Hart gave practical tools on how to embrace not only the legacy of the Dallas Herring lecture, but this notion of love and action, and to use that to create new systems or to enhance or, change the current systems that we have, so that we could ensure that we are making concrete action plans that activate love. I thought that was, he was encouraging us not to just talk about it. He was encouraging us to act. And I think that's so powerful. And as I was thinking about it, I really have three top things, right? First of all, leading with heart. Dr. Lowry Hart emphasized that leading with love isn't just soft, but it's a really powerful framework for transformation. And I think we need to remember that, because I think that some people might say this concept is too mushy, right? And it's not. It's complicated. It's difficult. It's not soft. It's hard. Second, I think meeting each and every student where they are was what he focused on. And he may not have framed it exactly that way throughout, but the lecture really did underscore the moral imperative that we have to remove barriers for all of our students, and to meet each and every student where they are. And then finally, it was really all about community college as a catalyst. There was a really strong emphasis in what Russell said on how community colleges can be engines of economic mobility if we lead with empathy and lead with compassion. And I think for us specifically at Forsyth Tech, that just is music to our ears, right? Because we're all about that being a catalyst for equitable economic mobility.
Yeah, I think he showed the example of him doing like user groups, test like
Yeah.
discussions with students. And so definitely showed the listening aspect of that and figuring out what wasn't working for the student. He talked about the Maria, the persona student, and how it's not that we want them to change for us, but that we as a college need to try to meet their needs, the students' needs, so that it's more accessible to them as the student.
That's right. Yep.
Um, so what do you think makes loving so difficult now?
Yeah, what a great question. And so my answer is I don't know that I think it is so difficult or any more difficult than I think it's always been in the past. I think that we have an ability to be more connected than ever before. Um, but I think it requires us to be vulnerable and to actively listen. And I think that that maybe is what creates some barriers, right? And makes it a little bit hard. Um, it's kind of an interesting thing. Maybe a barrier is digital overload, which is technology that can both connect and disconnect us, right? Because we are seeing that it has sometimes made genuine human interaction more challenging. And so love seems to be very uh, personal, and it may be harder to show love from a distance than it is to show it in person. I think that, we just have to recognize that we're in a polarized climate, both socially and politically, and that tensions can make love feel risky. As if caring deeply sometimes maybe becomes defensive or can create defensiveness. And I think the fear of vulnerability is probably the biggest thing, right? Showing love and compassion sometimes means that you are exposing your own self, and your empathy can be uncomfortable in professional settings. I think that it's just, somewhat of a taboo to talk about love in professional settings, and that's too bad. Not a bad thing to love. We're human beings, and that's a core part of, I believe, what we're supposed to do. But I think it makes us vulnerable.
Yeah, I think Bell Hooks kind of covers that really well in the book as well, about how sometimes we think it's all mushy and it's a feeling that just happens,
Right.
but really it's action. And I think it does come down to listening, as sometimes we are so impressed to express our thoughts on certain topics, but to really listen, and both sides being listened to, knowing that if you listen to someone, that person will then listen to you, and then you guys can talk through different things, is the real way to show love.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well
So,
said.
how do you go about showing love to instructors and students now?
Yeah, great question. So I think that what I would start by saying is that I take Dr. Lowry Hart's advice to heart. No pun intended. Um, a huge part of that, I think, for us as a college is about embracing human-centered design, which we've been doing here at Forsyth Tech. And that involves listening to our students and understanding that if we are going to support our students to success, we need to center their voice in the conversation about what it is they need to be successful. For me personally, I think what I do is try to create a supportive culture. I want to make sure that we've got professional development for staff and faculty prioritized, as well as really trying to prioritize our employees' well-being, and and really help provide professional development about that, but also professional development about student-centered teaching methods, which helps us then love our students better to success. I think that I try to recognize and encourage and inspire, keeping us on the path of moving together to where we're trying to go, and celebrating accomplishments, if they're big accomplishments or small. I think simple acknowledgments go a long way. And I also really try to listen actively. I think that's important. I want to, when I'm talking with you, I'm paying attention, or I'm doing my best to pay attention and not be thinking about the 100 other things that both of us need to be thinking about. Because I want to remember your kids' names if you start telling me about your children. It's important to me to do that. And so I think the last thing I'll say is that I try to have an open door policy. I think being accessible is really important, and being able to invite people to come in and listen without judgment. I think that helps people, both faculty, staff, students, all of us, feel more valued and heard. So those are the things I try to do. And I want to share too that, Joy, that I think that that's not easy because we're so busy. Maybe one of the things that prohibits us from being able to really put this love into action is that things are so hectic and we're so busy and we have so many things competing for our time and attention. Being present is sometimes hard. And the more we can start to prioritize that, I think the easier and the better we'll be at really putting this love into action.
So kind of to go off that, I'm gonna throw a question that I didn't prepare you for, but how do you encourage people to be present? What are some techniques? Because that is extremely difficult, switching from job to home to friends, and making sure that you prioritize all of them and find time for all of them. So how do you help yourself stay present?
Couple of things. And I think we will talk about, the self-care piece of this love conversation. But I think that that's important. So, mindfulness, we have the Calm app that we've provided to all of our staff and faculty, because I think that we are attempting that focus on self-care and well-being. And those kinds of techniques help us center ourselves for the day ahead. So I use that in the morning, 5 a.m., right? To help me mentally prepare for the day. I think that we have to watch our calendars and we have to be more realistic about what we can accomplish in a day. And I want staff and faculty to not say to me, I'm just going to pack my calendar in with everything during the day, and at night I'll go home and catch up on email. At night, you need to go home and be present with your family and be present with the people that you care about outside of work, and be present with yourself and taking care of yourself. So mindfully taking care of making sure your calendar doesn't create that for you. I think when you are talking to someone, turn off distractions. I turned off email and Teams before we started this conversation, because I don't want to see that notification that's going to catch my eye on the screen and take me away from being in this conversation with you. So, getting rid of distractions when you're talking to people. And I sometimes I'll have cabinet meetings and I'll say, okay, we're unplugged today. We're going to sit here, we're going to have notebooks and paper, and we're going to look at each other when we talk, and we're not going to be taking notes on our computers or looking at the screens. We're going to be engaging with each other. So it's intentionality a lot, right?
Hmm. I like that. And then jumping back, how you talked about trying to be student-centered or human student-centered design. I really enjoy that too, because when, as instructional designer, you use a lot of research and you want to utilize that research, but you know, the students are always changing because technology is always changing. The world's always changing. And so our students are always changing. And so always taking what the research, but also morphing it into your teaching style and the students that you have, is really trying to put them as center. It's finding that balance in that medium, which I do appreciate.
Very much, yes.
So, we started to talk a little bit about Bell Hook's book, All About Love. And how would you say Hook defines love in that book?
I think that for me, she redefined the concept of love by talking about it as an action rather than a feeling, right? It's a choice. It's something we actively do rather than something we just feel. Now, I believe you do feel love, right? I'm not trying to, and that is action. But what she was really saying is to think about love, or what she said to me was think about love as a verb rather than a feeling. And remember that love is as love does. So that love really then requires intention, and it requires will, and it requires choice. So what I took away from her teaching through the book is that she really closely ties the active part of love with other things like respect, with conscious decisions that mean we have to put daily effort into nurturing growth. She talks about seeing love as a commitment to nurturing someone's spiritual, emotional, and intellectual development, and emphasize that true love is about honesty, about justice, about equality. And I think that was really some of the things I gained around her view of love from the book.
Yeah, I liked how she tied many different qualities to the
Mhm.
aspect of love because you sometimes think about love as just being this feeling and mushy and being cared for, which we'll talk a little bit about. But really, it incorporates so many different qualities, which can be almost overwhelming at times.
Right.
But it's it is a whole network of different values and things that come together to create this bigger aspect of love.
Absolutely. And I hope we don't get rid of the mushy part of love, right? I like that. I love a good rom-com. I like the mushiness of Hallmark. I admit it. Not in too big of doses, right? I have to measure
Only
that.
Christmas time.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm in the mood for it, and sometimes it's a little too mushy. But yeah, I think it's still mushy, and I like that. But it can also be less mushy and more active. And that in a professional setting is what I think we're after, right?
Yeah, it's not just for a romantic partner. It
Yeah.
is for friends and extended family. It can be for coworkers as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Yeah.
can get off the phone and you're just like, all right, love you, bye. But
Yeah.
like, why it should be okay to be able to express that love
Yeah.
to close people around you because you can have that sort of relationship, not just with a romantic partner.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, how does Bell Hook compare and contrast the ideas of being cared for and being loved?
So, I believe that what she is saying to us is that while care is a critical component of love, you still can absolutely care for somebody without loving them as well, right? So, to me, what she was saying is that sometimes being cared for can be transactional. It can be, I'm meeting your basic needs, providing you with food and shelter or guidance. And it might be that care or caring for someone is very well intentioned, but it also can be superficial. And I think it's superficial if you don't connect the caring with genuine connection, right? If it's not caring and genuine connection, then maybe that's a little transactional and superficial. Whereas what I believe she was pointing out is that when you're loving someone, or when you're actively loving, that's more that's a deeper emotional investment, is the way I'll say it. It involves being attentive. It's about respect. It's about mutual growth and honesty. And I think that goes your duty to beyond your duty of caring for someone, to really showing them true empathy and having intentional actions.
I know when I was reading this chapter, it made me really evaluate my relationship with my children in terms of am I just being transactional? I'm caring for their needs. And sometimes you're just like, oh, why can't you just listen? I've given you food.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
it it's all those different values. It's the respect, it's the mutual growth. Like I'm not here just to raise them, but they're helping me and change and morph every day. And I really like that, is making sure that it's not just transactional. There's much more deep roots there than just I did
Yeah.
this for you, you can do this for me thing.
That's exactly right. And I will say, Joy, as a parent who has all adult children now, right? Um, Knowing that and thinking about that now while your kids are at home is so important because time goes so quickly. It's easier as a Gigi, right, for me um to not have that transactional kind of relationship with my grandkids because I'm not worried about how they're going to turn out either. I am worried about it. That's not true, but I'm not responsible for it in the same way. And so it's just, I think that if I could give advice to parents, I know that's what not this is not about in this conversation, but remembering that you have them with you in this, opportunity for parent-child relationship for such a short time period in the span of time, not making it about transaction, but really being there for them in that loving, intentional way is so, so important. And again, it's difficult because life is so busy and there's so many things competing for our time, but it's so important.
Yeah. So in what ways can the principles of love and compassion outlined by the book can be integrated into pedagogical practices of higher education?
Yeah. So, the basic idea about love from the book is rooted in the belief that love is a value, in my opinion, that can lead to um, well being, healing, belonging. And that aligns, I think, closely with the high regard that we all hold our students' well being. We're very invested in our students and at community colleges, especially at Forsyth Tech, particularly. And so we have this very strong desire to make sure that we're fostering a strong sense of belonging across all of our campuses and centers with our students. So, the first thing that I think we can do is to take away the idea that using the word love is taboo. I really think that's important. And, again, we talked about it's not always the mushy love. So, thinking about it in the right context, it becomes very less taboo. Understanding that the act of love is about practicing understanding others and considering the role of love in our responses. And so, I remember somebody telling me the first time I tried when I first came here, I wrote something and then I sent it to some people to have them, make sure it sounded right and edit it for me and give me their thoughts and feedback before I sent it out to the college as a whole. And I used the word loving our students. And they came back and said, you can't say that. You can't say loving students. And I was still very new as a president, not just new to Forsyth Tech. And so I thought, okay, maybe they're right. And I took it out. And I wish I had not taken it out. It took me a little bit of time to become more secure in my role, more secure as your president at the college, being the leader here at Forsyth Tech. And then I think back to that now and think, I absolutely can say it. And I do. And I say it a lot. So getting rid of the taboo and owning that it's okay to actively love, right? I think we can actively engage in collaborative activities that are going to help us foster empathy and respect among our students. That's one pedagogical way. I think that we can make sure we've got inclusive curriculum. We've spent time, providing education for that because I think that diversity of perspectives matters, and by understanding that we are in classrooms with such great diversity in a community college setting, particularly the generational diversity that we have, the socioeconomic diversity. Um, we need to validate life experiences of our students, and we do that when we understand how to teach with that understanding of the great diversity and making sure that we are representing that in our materials. And I think finally, I'll say practicing reflection. I'm a big fan of that. I want to encourage instructors and frankly, all of us to really reflect on how we teach and how we engage and support and love our students. How do we become more patient? How are we more encouraging? How are we more genuinely present with our students? I think that's a way that we can, the question's about pedagogy, but I think it goes beyond pedagogy and have to do with how we are teaching and how we are supporting our students as well.
Yeah, I think letting students be able to see themselves in the content that they're learning is extremely important, because it seems more meaningful and personal and helps them understand it and see the connections that are needed in order to build that long-term memory. And then
Right. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And then the reflection piece, that's for work and personal life,
Mhm.
um, building that time for reflection to know how to improve and do better and be better in anything that you're doing is extremely important. And then building out that time is important to make sure that you have that time to be reflective.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what role does self-love play in the broader context of love for others as described in the book?
Yeah, I really think that what Hooks was advocating for is for self-love to be a foundational tool on how we're able to love others. I think that what she was saying is that self-love gives you freedom and power, and it's a choice. It's an act of love that helps us. If we can love ourselves, we can love others, right? But if we can't love ourselves, how do we love others? So she, in my opinion, tied self-love with self-acceptance, self-compassion, cutting ourselves a break sometimes, self-responsibility, self-awareness, really uh, asking us and encouraging us, or I guess I'll say it this way. I think that what essentially she was giving us is encouragement to model healthy boundaries, because I think that educators who practice self-care, self-compassion are much better equipped to then support their students' well-being. So I'll go back to what I said about looking at that calendar and not overextending yourself. And build, if you have to set time on your calendar for self, then make it an actual, if that helps, make it an actual calendar commitment so that you can practice that self-care, which is going to ultimately give you the energy and the motivation and the clarity around how you better support your students. And I think it's also encouraging us to remember that if we can treat ourselves kindly, we will become more naturally empathetic and more consistent in how we care for others. No one can pour from an empty cup. And at the end of the day, I really think that's what she means. Summed up in a nutshell, that's the basis of what she's talking about.
Yeah, I think those are really good points, is you can't get people to love, you can't demand love for things that you can't love about yourself.
Yeah.
And to be able to practice that self-care that's needed to be able to help other people. Um, I know when you're confident in yourself, you're able to reach out more because
Yeah.
you're not pulling inward, you're pulling outward.
Right.
Um, and being able to have that self-love and self-confidence and self-awareness of
Yeah,
what to do really helps be able to reach out.
absolutely.
So, how does the perspective of love intersect with goals of higher education in promoting critical thinking, empathy, and social justice?
So I think that according to Bell, love, when when you understand it as an active practice and not just a passive emotion, is a crucial component of higher education, um, or can be, should be a crucial component of higher education that we could use to significantly promote critical thinking, empathy, and social justice. Basically, we can encourage students to see themselves as part of a connected community. Um, we can actively listen to diverse perspectives of our students. We can help our students understand how to engage with issues of with issues um, compassionately and responsibly. Um, Essentially, using love as a lens to analyze and address social justice or social injustices, I think is what she was getting at in the book. And I'd break that down into three ways that I think her perspective of love intersects with the goals of higher education, which is the question I think you had, Joy. First of all, I think empathy can be a gateway, right? By leading with love, we can foster classrooms where our students not only feel comfortable speaking, but feel comfortable taking intellectual risk, feel comfortable engaging in challenging dialogue in the right way, and in the right form and format. Number two, I think that meeting students where they are, right, is a practical way for compassionate educators to be able to really help prepare students to think critically about their roles in society. We meet them where they are and we take them as far as they can go. And along that journey, we are helping prepare them not just academically for the careers they're going to have and the skills they need for those careers, but as we say in our vision statement, it's about being a catalyst for equitable economic mobility, comma, empowering lives and transforming communities. So hopefully we're also in educating. Educating is so holistic here at Forsyth Tech. It's about educating for career and for life. And then finally, to kind of piggyback onto that, my third point is holistic development, right? Um, Her conversation, her perspectives on love, at being active um, and all those things intersect with our goal in higher education, and particularly here at Forsyth Tech, around helping our students develop holistically. When students feel like they're valued, they're much more likely to persist. They're much more likely to succeed academically, and they're much more likely to carry that empathy and critical thinking into the broader world. And so that sense of belonging that we work so hard to create is all about holistically viewing our students as not just those folks sitting in our classroom for 50 minutes or longer, but that we're looking at them as whole human beings and focusing on how we help them grow and develop holistically.
I like that because it's showing how to model what they should be doing in their lives. We're
Absolutely.
showing them how to listen to people and build that empathy. And we're teaching them how to have a dialogue with people by showing that love to students
Mhm.
and listening to them and then encouraging that listening to be had from their end. It's modeling those practices of
Yeah,
love so that they can slowly implement them in their lives.
that's exactly right. Very well said.
So what strategies we've talked about many of them already, but what strategies can educators employ to foster environments of self-love and mutual respect in the classroom? We've talked about calendaring, and
Yeah.
I'm a huge advocate for that. I know when things are super busy, things continue to get busy, right? We'll get Teams messages or emails about other things, and really blocking time off to focus on things that need to get done is really beneficial. So,
Yeah.
is there other strategies that can be employed?
I think so. I think it's about creating a caring classroom environment, right? And maybe some of that involves like mindful check-ins. How do we start class meetings, um, with reflection, or, centering around everyone, centering the classroom environment from the beginning. I think it's about very clear and empathetic, compassionate communication. Constructive feedback emphasizes growth, not judgment, and setting. But I also think you can be kind in that, in the way that you do that. So, um, encouraging self-reflection and personal growth, and also creating an environment that is respectful dialogue, establishing norms around listening, speaking, and collaboration. So just ways that we can, foster an environment that has self-love and mutual respect is by setting the expectations of what that looks like, and clearly communicating that, and holding ourselves and our students accountable for that.
Mhm. One thing that we didn't talk about Bell's book is the kind of power in love. There isn't really there shouldn't be a power dynamic, and I think that that
Yeah.
can be easily transferred in terms of an instructor and student perspective and relationship. And so trying to remove that power aspect and
Yeah.
just listen to and be have your boundaries that are respectful, but still being able to listen to any concerns is great for figuring that out and hopefully coming up to resolutions with issues that might arise.
Totally agree. Absolutely.
So for faculty who are navigating the evolving demands of teaching in the community college system, what advice would you give to them to help them thrive and stay engaged with their students?
Some of the things that we've already talked about, the calendaring, the taking time for yourself, making sure that you're being intentional about how you're spending your time, and caring for yourself. I think it's also, in my opinion, if we can stay curious, intentionally curious, then professional development, continually learning, reminding ourselves that we are telling our students the importance of education and talking about lifelong learning all the time with our students, but it's important for us too. And really using our professional development time to learn, and also to reinvigorate our passion. Remind ourselves why we do what we do, because I firmly believe when you work at a community college, you're not just here for a job. It's about your purpose. It's about, and I would say make sure it's your purpose, because I personally believe that when we find our purpose and live it with passion every day, that's when we are getting the most out of life. I think we can remember to intentionally celebrate small wins, recognize student progress, as a win for us as teachers. That's why we're doing what we're doing. So when we see our students making that progress, take time to celebrate that, and take time to celebrate our own teaching milestones as well. And then I think one of the things I love most about community colleges in general, and Forsyth Tech particularly, is that we have a caring community, and we can seek more community. Um, I think we get our best support from our colleagues. It's okay to love our colleagues. You said that. We spend an awful lot of time together. So it's nice when we can offer each other support, and when we cannot be afraid to seek that support when we need it. We can share resources and be there to help our colleagues navigate challenges, because they're going to be there to help us. So two things: be there and be willing to support and help our colleagues, and be willing to accept that same in return from them.
I love the stay curious. It keeps you questioning and critically thinking and having that passion to help other people find that passion. It gives you that sense of drive and encouragement and excitement in the things that you are doing and celebrating the small wins, and loving the colleagues around you makes a huge difference in satisfaction in your job and the fulfillment that you get from the things that you do in everyday aspects of your job. So, how can instructors balance the pressures of administrative duties, and the desire to maintain strong student-centered classroom practices?
Such a good question, an important question, and a difficult question, because it all comes down to that all the busyness and all the things that are competing for our limited time. But I've got three things that I'll say. First, I'll say prioritize and delegate if you can. And by prioritizing, what I'm suggesting is if you can find ways to focus on those tasks that directly impact student success first and foremost, and then, if possible, either streamline the less critical administrative tasks or delegate them, then that's important. And so it's also hard. And I'm not trying to suggest that any of these are easy things. It's just some hopefully helpful things to help guide our faculty in this important piece of balance. And I want to say too that I'm not the best person to talk about balancing strategies because I'm not the best person at doing it myself. I'm better at it than I used to be because I intentionally focus on trying to figure it out, and because I have a partner in my husband who is very actively engaged at my request and his need also to help me with that, right? To help me. And so maybe I'll throw in a fourth one. Find a partner to help you balance, right? Get somebody, whether it's your husband, your boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, spouse, or friend or colleague, somebody that can help you recognize when your balance is off is really important. And that ties into my second one, which is time management. Schedule office hours that are not just student hours, but also maybe for administrative tasks. I try to work on this daily. I have my assistant, Andrea, help me put time on my calendar that says, don't block, don't put a meeting here. This is my office time. Protect that. Protect your teaching and your reflecting time also. And then the third thing I'll say is advocate for yourself. Let us know. Communicate openly with your leadership about workload pressures. Don't just suffer in silence and think that we don't care. Sometimes we're not going to know if you're overwhelmed, right? We're not going to be paying attention like you are to, oh my gosh, they've asked me to do this, and now this person has said, can I do this? And I'm saying yes to everything. So openly let us know when we are unintentionally, because I really do believe it's unintentional if we're overwhelming you, or I hope it is, and I believe that at least most of the time it is. So let us know when we're overloading you and suggest ways that we can improve our systems so that we don't do that in the future.
Yeah, I've loved this conversation. I No pun intended. It's been super, super fun to get your perspectives on these things and the idea of loving the things that you do, loving the people around you. It has, it's been eye-opening to read the book and listen to the lectures and through this conversation. Um, it can get overwhelming at times. And so, because kind of all these different values equal love, and there's so many different things to that you might be able to implement to better show love to colleagues and students. So what is maybe one takeaway as we close this episode? What is one takeaway that you might want instructors to remember from this podcast?
Um, So, what I will say is that love can be a transformative force. Um, and I'm going to use something really personal, real quickly, to describe what I mean by that. Many folks who have been here since 2021 will know that I lost my mother in January of 2021, and at her funeral service, I gave a eulogy, and I said that one of the things that my mother taught me and that I loved most about my mom was that she always led with love. And so as I was reading Belle's book and listening to Dr. Russell Lowery Hart too, even before that, because I read the book after the lecture, I remembered that. And I thought, oh my gosh, my mom could have written this book in so many ways. When you lead with love, this is what she taught me. When you lead with love, that means that you are showing genuine care, genuine empathy, that you are actively supporting. And I think that what I want to share with faculty and staff, with all of us, is that when we lead with love like that, it gives us an opportunity to create not just better students, but better futures. And that's transformative, right? That's transformative for the students themselves, but for their families, for our communities. So for me, it's about remembering to recognize the profound potential in every student, in every person, and then commit as their faculty, teachers and mentors and guides and role models to commit to helping each and every student realize that potential. So at the end of the day, the last thing I'll say is that this is what I say a lot, and it's really what I believe I found this book affirming, is that we are here to love and serve each and every student to success. And that looks differently depending on the student, because our students are so beautifully diverse and unique. And so just remember to lead with love, and that love can be very transformative for our students, and that what you're doing is the most noble profession for a reason, because it is changing lives every single day.
I think that's perfectly said. Love is transformative for everyone involved. Students, teachers, community. It it changes the world when we're able to practice and show love in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us on this episode of EdTech Talk. Tune in next time for more insights, discussions, and inspirations in the world of higher education. Until then, keep on leading and learning.